Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Rockies Daily. I'm your host, Scott Ayers, where we're talking all things Colorado Rockies. Happy Friday. Thanks for being here, and let's just jump into it. And look, the Detroit Tigers just signed Framber Valdez, which is another big signing for the Tigers, or another big move, I should say, for a team that's made the playoffs 2 years in a row now. And this isn't going to shock you because you can read. I know my listeners can read. Detroit needs to be the blueprint for the Colorado Rockies. And why do I say that? Well, for one, we've already heard Warren Schaefer talk about how he wants to emulate AJ Hinch and copy some of his in-game strategies, right? Of making in-game decisions with different utility players, bats, pitching, you name it. But even more so, you get a little bit deeper into it. And before the last 2 years where the Tigers had made the playoffs, they had gone on a 9-year drought of not only missing the playoffs, but just not being a great baseball team. In 2019, they went 47-114. And as a Rockies fan, and I think as the Rockies organization, it's a great team to look at, see what they were able to do, and just copy a few notes, right? You're in class, you're struggling. Look over to the guy next to you. He's gotten D's for most of his semester, but all of a sudden he's starting to get some A's. How the hell is this guy getting A's all of a sudden? That's what the Rockies kind of need to do. And look, there's some pieces that you're probably going to struggle to find. Finding the best pitcher in baseball is not going to be something that Rockies are probably able to do. But some of these other pieces that, I think is very not only doable, but achievable for the Rockies, right? Investing in pieces that are cornerstone pieces. You look at Torkelson and Green from Detroit. You can find that with the Rockies, and I think that's what 2026 can be all about. Who are some of those cornerstone pieces? We have ideas about who some of those guys may be. You obviously have Tovar, you have Goodman, possibly Doyle, possibly Dollander, right? Like you have some different names that you can at least think about building around. And there could be names that I didn't list that could be on the come up that are huge pieces for the Rockies. That's one thing. That's what Detroit was able to do. They found their cornerstone pieces and were able to start to build around them. They found a manager that they really liked in AJ Hinch. That's a big thing. They obviously have the best pitcher in baseball, but they also went for home run swings and went after guys like Javi Baez, who obviously at times has struggled in Detroit, but that's a kind of aggressive nature that you have to have in order to help turn things around. These are all pretty darn achievable things. And so it gives you the good news for the Rockies of, hey, we think we have the right front office in place. We think we're going to establish the right culture. Now it's just the ability to start building. The downside is it was 2019 when the Detroit won 47 games, and it wasn't until 2024 that they had made the playoffs. So it took time, and obviously you have that COVID year in there, which was just weird for everyone. And you didn't really start to see real improvements until, 22 or 2023, excuse me. 2024, the Tigers went on a pretty sweet run to make the playoffs. And then 2025, they won the division again. They continue to be a threat in the AL. And now they obviously bolster their starting rotation and have the pieces to once again be a playoff team, or at least be a very competitive baseball team. And so it's just important for the Rockies to look at that and say, okay, we can do that. I'm not saying, well, Detroit's the only example. There's examples all across baseball. But they are a recent example of a team who was really, really bad and were able to turn it around. But obviously, you need things to go your way. There's a part of it that you can't control, and that is just a luck aspect of lucking out on certain prospects, because you can do all the scouting in the world. You can pick the guy that is perfect for your club, and he can have a career-ending injury, you know, a year into playing baseball with you, right? Like random things happen. Random things can happen, but a lot of it is controlled. So the Rockies now have a front office that they believe. They have a guy in Paul Podesta that they believe in. But, this whole week we've just been it's all been about asking questions and just how are we going to think going into 2026? And I think looking for those cornerstone pieces is a big deal. And we've talked about it. What would be a good season for the Colorado Rockies? And we've had some talks of this, right? Like, and it's just the many questions you can ask, right? Like, what does player development look like? What does the culture look like? What are the building blocks? Who are the cornerstone pieces? The Rockies have a lot of different questions of what would deem this a good season, but results at the end of the day still matter. Attendance was at its total attendance was at its lowest since 2007. So there were clear signs that fans are pretty fed up with this team. So we can all go in and say, hey, this is a team that we don't expect to make the playoffs, but it's a team that we better see some more results. Because right now, it's hard to support a team that can't break 50 wins. And it really, we just talked about the Tigers. They missed, it was 9 straight years of missing the playoffs. The Rockies have already missed 7 straight. That series against the Cubs, or that wild card game against the Cubs and then series against the Brewers, feels like ages ago. Tony Walters giving us the flex of a lifetime feels like it was in a different lifetime. And so that's, I think, been the hardest part is we now have a front office that we feel comfortable with. The problem is we've already been, quote unquote, in this rebuild stage for 7 seasons. Now, obviously, after that year they made the playoffs, they expected to have some competitive teams, and they didn't, and then they trade Nolan, and all these different things. But, I mean, really since 2020, 2021, this team has just, they haven't shown enough life. And obviously that's a given because they've had 3 straight seasons of 100+ losses. And so what would be a good season? It's determining those cornerstone pieces, right? It's if some guys aren't pieces, okay, well, what do you do with those pieces, right? Like Brenton Doyle feels like he's kind of in the crosshairs in this type of conversation. I think a lot of us expect a big bounce back year from him, but that will be a question for the Rockies. And if he does have a good year, maybe you still don't see him as a cornerstone piece, but you up his value and you're able to flip him. We talked about tradable assets yesterday. That's a possibility for a lot of these guys. If they're not seen as a cornerstone piece, but you think you can get something out of them, maybe one of the big successes is how do you bring in more prospects and build out that farm system, or just build out a young core that you can feel comfortable with moving forward. So there's a lot of different ways of how the Rockies are going to approach this, how they can approach this. But it goes back to just that one thing that we need to see results, because no fan is going to put up with another 40-41 season. I think a lot of us would be okay if those attendance numbers dipped a little bit more if the Rockies struggle. We don't obviously want the Rockies to be bad. And the reason why I say that, though, is put a little fire underneath management, under ownership, and start to take some action, because the lack of action over the last few years has been obviously very disappointing, but it's now a new perspective with a new front office. So that's the one difference. We feel a lot more confident with Josh Burns, Paul Podesta, but results will matter. And I think wanting to win 60 games should not be a crazy desire if you're a fan. Winning 60 games still means you have 100 losses, but it would be a vast improvement from the season before. So I think breaking that 60-win barrier is essentially a must for the Rockies. And that's not a huge request. It feels really big for Colorado, but I think the ability to be a team that doesn't have 100 losses would be a really successful season for Colorado, just based on the current roster that they have. So now there could be a reality where they're playing just crazy baseball and are more competitive than any of us think. I just think that reality is la la land and doesn't exist. But I hope I'm super wrong. I hope I'm just way off and the rotation is like a top 5 rotation in baseball. But again, la la land. Don't think that's happening. So we talk about results, but let's talk about something that is coming up very soon. And we're going to get some guys starting to report here in about a week, which is huge. And we now have our spring training schedule. And we have a couple different fun matchups. We have the spring breakout game between top prospects between the Rockies and the Diamondbacks on March 21st, which will be a really interesting test, or at least eye test, I should say, just to get a better feel and understanding of what the Rockies are working with in this farm system. Again, it's obviously just spring training, but man, that is going to be an awesome time to overreact. And our Rockies play well in that game. Oh my gosh, the overreactions are going to be incredible. So that's obviously one, but there's not a game that matters more than when the Colorado Rockies take on Team USA Baseball. It's the first time a World Series game has been played in March, ladies and gentlemen, because the Colorado Rockies are essentially hydrogen bomb versus coughing baby type of game with Team USA. And that's an early March matchup. Humbled. That's obviously once again a spring training game. No, doesn't really matter. But man, the victory lapping I will do if Colorado can sneak out a win in a game that absolutely has no meaning. Golly, that would be special. But it's also just going to be, I think, a pretty cool thing to see for the Rockies to be in that game. But I think a lot of us are maybe a little bit worried about what the results could entail. But hey, you know what? Spring training baseball, weird things happen. But you can check out that full schedule online. But the moral of the story is spring is here. We're going to get a much, much better understanding of what we're working with this ball club. We'll get a better understanding of, hey, who's actually going to be the guy at first? Who's on first? What's on second? Who's on first? But really, what's that infield actually look like? And I mentioned first base because that feels like the biggest question mark. Seems like we have a pretty decent understanding of most of what lineup and rotation will look like. Still some questions about the starting rotation, but that first base position feels like it is wide open. And you hope that isn't a concern, and instead there's just this like shining light of a player that has a Hunter Goodman-esque season. I don't expect anyone to have that good of a season, like a coming out season, but I mean, you just want that first base position to have some, I don't know, a solid feeling there. So that's that on the spring training schedule. And then finally, Yanquiel Fernandez finds a home with the New York Yankees. It's a good story to end on, just because we all knew he probably was going to go sign somewhere. And of course, it's the New York Yankees. It honestly feels like we are a feeder team to the Yankees. I don't know the player count, and it's probably less than I actually think it is. I swear, every Colorado Rocky somehow ends up playing for the Yankees. And so, this is now the second Rocky in the last week and a half that has now become a Yankee. And you know what? You hope Fernandez can figure things out. It just wasn't going to work in Colorado, just especially with the outfield that we currently have. But you're happy for him, and you hope that he has more success in New York than he did in Colorado. And also, it's nice that he went to the AL, because if he does figure it out, you don't want him terrorizing our beloved Rockies. But that'll do it for today's show. I hope you liked the episode. Please make sure to hit that like button and subscribe. The growth of this channel has been really sweet, so just know I really appreciate you watching, whether it's for 30 seconds or for the few of you that are brave and have made it to the very end of this show. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday.